The massive research vessel Seeker dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Its silver hull gleamed in the distant sunlight as it slowly moved toward the third planet, a beautiful blue marble that their scans showed was teeming with life. Director Blue stood at the main observation deck, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he studied the approaching planet. His species had visited hundreds of worlds across the galaxy, but none had shown such intense biological activity. The scanner readings were off the charts. "Director, preliminary scans complete," announced Professor White, her tentacles dancing across the holographic display. "The planet shows more biodiversity than any world we've cataloged. It's a garden world beyond our wildest expectations." The research team gathered around the central display, their expressions showing various degrees of excitement. They had spent decades studying life-bearing worlds for the Unified Species Coalition, but Earth promised to be different. Most planets they'd encountered had simple ecosystems, producer organisms that created energy from their suns, and consumer organisms that fed on these producers. Clean, efficient, and peaceful. "Launch the observation drones," Director Blue ordered. "Standard protocol. Observe only, no interaction." The ship's automated systems deployed dozens of invisible drones toward Earth's surface. Each one was smaller than a fly and completely undetectable to Earth's current technology level. The research team gathered around their individual stations, ready to document what they assumed would be another peaceful garden world. The first drone reached an area that the humans called African savanna. The research team watched in fascination as the drone transmitted images of tall yellow grass swaying in the wind and large herding creatures grazing peacefully. "Look at the harmony," Professor White said, her voice filled with joy. "These large herbivores are just like the grazers on our world. They take what they need from the plants, and the plants regrow. Perfect symbi." Her words cut off in a horrified gasp. On their screens, a group of massive yellow-maned creatures had burst from the grass. The peaceful scene transformed into chaos as the predators chased down one of the grazing animals. The research team watched in stunned silence as the lions brought down the zebra. What are we seeing?" "Green," a junior researcher whispered. His skin had turned pale, a sign of extreme distress in their species. "Turn it off," someone shouted, but Director Blue held up his hand. "We must document everything," he said, though his voice trembled. "This is unprecedented." More feeds started coming in from other drones. Each one showed similar scenes across different environments. In the oceans, large creatures were consuming smaller ones. In the forests, smaller predators were hunting even smaller prey. Even in the microscopic views, tiny organisms were consuming each other. "It's everywhere," Professor White said, her scientific curiosity overtaking her initial horror. "The entire planet is based on this consumption hierarchy. Multiple layers of organisms consuming each other. It's not just producer and consumer. It's producer, consumer, and consumer of consumer." Director Blue felt his head spinning as he tried to process what they were seeing. In all their explorations, they had never encountered a world where organisms systematically consumed other complex life forms. The very idea was abhorrent to their peaceful species. "Send the data back to the Coalition," he ordered. "They need to know what we found. This planet, it's not just a garden world. It's something else entirely." As the team continued to watch their feeds, a new understanding began to dawn on them. This world wasn't chaos. It was a complex dance of life and death, of energy flowing from one form to another in ways they had never imagined possible. It was beautiful in its own terrible way, like watching the birth of a star or the death of a planet. "Director," Professor White called out, her voice urgent. "You need to see this. We've detected signs of advanced civilization. But these beings seem to be part of this consumption system too." Director Blue moved to her station, his four eyes widening as he saw the first images of human civilization. Little did he know, their discovery of Earth's food chain was just the beginning. What they would learn about humans would challenge everything they thought they knew about life in the universe. 3 days had passed since their first shocking observation of Earth's predator-prey relationships. The research vessel Seeker now had thousands of drones deployed across the planet, each sending back more disturbing footage than the last. Lead researcher Green sat at his station, his hand shaking as he documented yet another predation event. He had been assigned to study what the humans called the ocean, and every hour brought new horrors. "Director Blue," he called out, his voice wavering. "You need to see this footage from the deep ocean sectors." The main screen lit up with images from the depths, a massive creature with black and white coloring. What humans called an orca was working with its group to hunt. The aliens watched as the intelligent predators created waves to wash a seal off an ice floe. "They're working together," Professor White whispered. "These aren't mindless acts of violence. They're coordinating their hunting efforts." Director Blue's 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the footage. Add it to the growing list of organized predation behaviors. The coalition needs to understand that this planet doesn't just have consumption. It has evolved intelligence specifically for hunting. The observation deck was now covered in multiple screens, each showing different ecosystems. In one, a spider crafted an intricate web to trap flying insects. In another, a snake lay perfectly still, waiting for small mammals to pass by. The ocean feeds showed everything from tiny fish eating even tinier fish to enormous whales filtering thousands of small creatures through their baleen. "I've completed the initial food web analysis," Professor White announced, pulling up a holographic diagram. Unlike their usual simple producer-consumer charts, this one looked like an intricate spider's web, with countless lines connecting different species. "Impossible," one of the junior researchers muttered. "How can a system this complex maintain stability?" Green, who had been analyzing historical data, spoke up. "It's not always stable. Look at this." He projected images of extinct Earth species. Species regularly go extinct when they can't adapt. Then new ones evolve to fill their roles. The entire planet is in a constant state of evolutionary arms race. The research team fell silent as they contemplated this revelation. On their worlds, species lived in harmony, each filling their niche without threatening others. The idea of constant adaptation, of species evolving better hunting or defense mechanisms, was completely foreign to them. "Here's something even more disturbing," Green continued, switching to new footage. "Watch this small predator." The screen showed a house cat stalking a bird. The cat wasn't hungry, as evidenced by its full food bowl visible in the corner of the scene. Yet it hunted anyway, seemingly for entertainment. They hunt for pleasure. Director Blue's skin paled to an almost white shade. "Document this behavior pattern across all predator species. We need to know if this is common or an anomaly." As the day progressed, more data poured in. They discovered that many Earth predators would hunt even when not hungry. Some would play with their prey before killing it. Others would teach their young to hunt using live prey as practice. "Director," Professor White called out suddenly, her voice urgent. "The computational analysis of the dominant species, humans, is complete. You won't believe this." The team gathered around her station as she displayed the results. According to their scans, humans didn't fit into any single category. They could digest both plant and animal matter. They had forward-facing eyes like predators, but social structures like prey species. They had no natural weapons, but their intelligence let them create tools for hunting. "They're everything at once," Director Blue said, his voice filled with awe and horror. "They've transcended the natural categories we understand. No wonder they became the dominant species." As the research team continued their observations, they knew they had only scratched the surface of Earth's complexities. The real shock would come when they discovered just how deeply humans had integrated this system of predation into their very culture. The research vessel Seeker had moved into a higher orbit, its sensors now focused primarily on human settlements. After a week of studying Earth's wildlife, The alien scientists had turned their attention to humanity's relationship with the planet's complex food web. Professor White stared at her screen in disbelief. Director Blue, our initial classification of humans was completely wrong. We thought they were prey species because of their soft skin and lack of natural weapons. Show me, Director Blue commanded, moving to her station with quick, nervous steps. The main screen filled with various scenes of human activity. In one, a human used a long stick with a pointed end to catch fish. In another, a group worked together to hunt larger animals. The most shocking footage showed humans using complex machines to harvest massive amounts of both plants and animals. They're not prey, Professor White explained, her tentacles twitching with excitement. They're apex predators. But they've achieved this without claws, without fangs, without any natural weapons at all. Green, who had been analyzing human biology, added his findings. Their digestive system is even more remarkable. Look at this data. He projected a detailed scan of human internal organs. They can process both plant and animal matter with nearly equal efficiency. It's unlike anything we've seen before. The research team gathered around the central display as Green continued his presentation. They don't just eat prey they catch. They deliberately raise other species for food. They modify plants and animals through selective breeding. They turned predation into an industry. Director Blue's 4 eyes blinked rapidly as he processed this information. On their worlds, the very idea of raising life forms for consumption was unthinkable. Yet humans had built their entire civilization around this concept. There's more, Professor White said, pulling up new footage. Watch this. The screen showed a human settlement, what they called a restaurant. Inside, humans were consuming parts of multiple species in a single meal. Plants, animals, and various processed forms of both were being eaten together. They've turned consumption into an art form, she explained. They combine different species in ways that enhance flavors. They use heat and chemicals to transform their food. They even have cultural celebrations centered around specific ways of consuming other life forms. The alien scientists watched in fascinated horror as scenes from different human cultures played across their screens. Humans cooking over fire, processing plants into new forms, preserving animal products for later consumption. It was overwhelming. How do they justify this to themselves? One of the junior researchers asked, their voice barely a whisper. Director Blue pulled up the results of their cultural analysis. They've developed complex philosophical and religious frameworks around their consumption habits. Many of them acknowledge their role as predators, but see it as part of a larger natural cycle. They have concepts like respect for food and sustainable harvesting. But the most incredible thing, Green interrupted, is how this affected their evolution. He displayed a timeline of human development. Their ability to consume and process such a wide variety of food sources allowed them to spread across their entire planet. Their big brains, which they used to become better hunters, also gave them the intelligence to develop their technology. Professor White nodded in agreement. They're not just part of the food chain. They've become its masters. They can choose what to eat, how to prepare it, and even how to modify their food sources for better results. As the team continued their analysis, a new understanding began to dawn on them. Humans weren't just another species in Earth's complex food web. They had taken the brutal system they evolved in and turned it into something else entirely, a tool for their own advancement. Director Blue made a final note in his report to the Coalition. Earth's dominant species has not just adapted to their world's hostile consumption hierarchy. They have embraced it, refined it, and used it to fuel their rise to planetary dominance. The implications for our understanding of civilizational development are profound. The real question now is how to approach these beings who had turned predation into an art form. The diplomatic team would need to be warned. Their first contact protocols were about to be severely tested. The research vessel Seeker had begun intercepting Earth's media broadcasts, and the alien crew was struggling to process what they were seeing. Director Blue had to call for an emergency meeting after several junior researchers requested stress leave. The humans broadcast their consumption habits for entertainment, Professor White explained to the gathered team, her voice trembling slightly. On the main screen behind her played something the humans called a cooking show. They compete to prepare the most appealing dead organisms, Green added, his skin shifting to a sickly pale color. They judge each other based on how well they transform other life forms into what they call cuisine. The screen showed a human chef expertly cutting what had once been a fish, while enthusiastically explaining the process to an audience. The alien observers watched in horrified fascination as the chef then exposed the prepared flesh to intense heat, adding various plant materials for what they called seasoning. Director Blue forced himself to continue watching. Show them the other types of programming we've discovered. Professor White reluctantly changed the feed. Now the screen displayed what humans called a nature documentary. The aliens watched as a calm voice described, in almost loving detail, how a pride of lions hunted their prey. The camera work was beautiful, the narration almost poetic. They don't just accept the violence in their world, one researcher noted. They celebrate it. They find beauty in it. The next channel showed humans actively participating in hunting activities. They used advanced tools to track and kill other organisms, not out of necessity, but for what they called sport or tradition. The most disturbing discovery, Green said, changing the display to show human educational content, is how they introduce their young to these concepts. Look at this. The screen showed what humans called a children's farm program. Young humans were being taught about where their food came from. They were shown animals being raised for food, taught about the process of harvesting plants, and even encouraged to help prepare meals. They don't hide any of it from their children, Professor White observed. They teach them that this is natural, normal, even necessary. Director Blue moved to the center of the room. Our psychological analysis suggests this openness about consumption might be key to their mental stability. Unlike our species, they don't deny their role in their world's food chain. They've made peace with it. The team watched more broadcasts, commercials for food products, documentaries about different cultural cuisines, shows about survival in the wild, and endless variations of cooking programs. Each one revealed new layers of humanity's complex relationship with consumption. Look at this, Green said suddenly, pulling up a new feed. They even have entire channels dedicated to what they call food culture. They travel across their planet to experience different ways of consuming other organisms. Professor White added her own observation. And these restaurants we discovered, they're not just feeding stations. They're social gathering places. Humans bond over shared consumption of prepared organisms. The team's psychologist, Purple, who had been quietly observing until now, finally spoke up. I recommend we classify Earth as a restricted zone. Our people are not prepared for this level of acceptance of consumption. The cultural shock could be severe. But Director Blue shook his head. The coalition needs to understand this. Something unprecedented has happened on Earth. These humans haven't just survived in a world of constant consumption. They've turned it into art. They've built their culture around it. As if to emphasize his point, the main screen showed a human family gathering for what they called a barbecue. There was joy in their faces as they shared their prepared food, talked, and laughed together. We need to understand this, Director Blue continued. But first, we need to prepare our diplomatic team. They'll need extensive psychological preparation before they can interact with humans. Especially, he added with a slight shudder, if humans offer to share what they call a meal with us. The research team continued watching the broadcasts, each one revealing new aspects of humanity's unique relationship with their world's food chain. They had no idea that their own understanding of life and survival was about to be challenged even further. The coalition's diplomatic vessel, Harmony, descended through Earth's atmosphere, its advanced cloaking systems keeping it hidden from human detection. After weeks of research and preparation, the time had come for first contact. The diplomatic team had been chosen carefully and briefed extensively about Earth's unique culture. Lead Diplomat Gray stood before his nervous team. "Remember your training. We've practiced this. The humans will offer us what they call food. Stay calm and polite." The chosen location was a private estate owned by one of Earth's governments. The human representatives had been contacted through secure channels, and both sides had agreed to a small, informal meeting to establish first contact. The humans had insisted on including what they called a dinner as part of the diplomatic protocol. "Sending down the shuttle now," the pilot announced. "The humans are waiting in their designated area." As the alien diplomats descended from their shuttle, the small group of human representatives watched with obvious excitement. The humans had been told about their visitors' vegetarian nature and had promised to respect their dietary restrictions. Lead Diplomat Gray stepped forward, raising his hand in the universal greeting they had observed humans using. "We come in peace," he said through their translation device. The human delegation responded warmly, and introductions were made. Everything was going smoothly until they moved to what humans called the dining room. The table was set beautifully, with clear efforts made to accommodate their alien guests. The humans had prepared what they called a vegetarian feast, but what the aliens saw horrified them beyond their worst expectations. "These are plant corpses," whispered one of the junior diplomats, looking at the salad. "They've mutilated them and arranged their remains in patterns." Gray maintained his composure, even as he watched humans using metal tools to pierce and lift the processed plant matter to their mouths. The human delegates were clearly trying to be polite, explaining each dish and its preparation. "This is our finest roasted vegetable medley," one human representative said proudly, lifting a cover to reveal what appeared to be plant organisms that had been exposed to extreme heat. Two of the alien diplomats had to excuse themselves. The others stayed, but their color had faded to a sickly pale shade. The humans, noticing their guests' discomfort, tried to lighten the mood. "Perhaps you'd prefer the fruit platter," another representative suggested helpfully, presenting a collection of reproductive organs from various plants. That was when the incident occurred. A junior diplomat, seeing the arranged fruit, lost control and screamed, "You're serving infant plants." The human delegates looked confused and concerned. Lead Diplomat Gray tried to salvage the situation, but then came the final shock. "Dessert. We've prepared a special vegan chocolate cake," announced the human chef proudly, bringing out what looked like a brown tower of processed plant materials. "What makes it brown?" asked one of the braver alien diplomats. "Oh, we take cacao beans, ferment them, roast them, grind them up," the chef began enthusiastically. 3 more alien diplomats fled the room. The humans watched in bewilderment as their guests turned various shades of pale and green. Lead Diplomat Gray, drawing on all his years of experience, managed to maintain his composure. "We appreciate your hospitality," he said carefully, "but I believe we should continue our discussions in another setting." The humans, still confused but trying to be accommodating, agreed. As they moved to a meeting room, Gray sent an urgent message to the research vessel. "Update needed on human consumption protocols. Diplomatic team experiencing severe cultural shock. Even their plant consumption is beyond our expectations." Later that evening, safely back on their ship, the diplomatic team gathered for an emergency debriefing. "How can we possibly form diplomatic relations with a species that treats other organisms this way?" one team member asked. Gray looked out at his shaken team. "We must adapt," he said firmly. "The humans are the dominant species of this world. Understanding their relationship with consumption is key to understanding them. We need to learn, even if it disturbs us." The first diplomatic dinner had been a disaster, but it had taught them an important lesson. They had only begun to understand the complexities of human culture and their relationship with their world's food chain. Young researcher Red sat alone in the research vessel's observation deck, surrounded by holographic displays of Earth's evolutionary history. While the diplomatic team recovered from their disastrous first contact, she had been granted permission to study human development from a different angle. Director Blue, she called out as her superior entered the room. I think I found something important about Earth's food chain. The director moved closer, his 4 eyes focusing on the display. Red had mapped out Earth's entire evolutionary timeline, from the first simple cells to modern humans. But she had done it differently from their previous analyses. Look here, she said, highlighting a series of connections. Every major advancement in Earth's history came from survival pressure. The prey got faster, so the predators evolved better hunting strategies. The predators got stronger, so the prey developed better defenses. Director Blue watched as she played an accelerated simulation of Earth's evolution. It's like a dance, he muttered, seeing the pattern for the first time. Exactly. Red's excitement was visible in her color shifting to bright orange. And humans are the ultimate result of this dance. Their big brains didn't develop despite Earth's harsh food chain. They developed because of it. She pulled up new data, showing early human development. They needed to outsmart both predators and prey. They had to remember which plants were safe to eat, which were poisonous. They had to learn to coordinate hunts, to preserve food for lean times, to cook meat to make it safer to eat. Are you suggesting, Director Blue said slowly, that Earth's violent food chain created human intelligence? Not just suggesting. I can prove it. Red displayed brain-size comparisons across Earth's species. The most intelligent species on this planet are either predators or prey that needed to outsmart predators. Dolphins, apes, elephants, crows, all of them evolved intelligence as a survival strategy. The observation deck filled with other researchers as word spread about Red's discovery. Professor White joined them, her scientific curiosity overcoming her usual disgust at Earth's consumption habits. But there's more, Red continued. Look at their technological development. She showed the progression of human tools, from simple spears to complex machines. Every major advancement in their history came from their need to better manage their food supply. Agriculture led to settled communities. Food preservation led to chemistry. The need to track seasons for hunting and planting led to astronomy. The research team watched in fascination as Red connected more dots. The humans' complex social structures, their ability to cooperate in large groups, even their abstract thinking, all could be traced back to advantages in surviving Earth's competitive ecosystem. And here's the most important part, Red said, pulling up images of Earth's biodiversity. This system, as shocking as it is to us, created more diversity than any other world we've studied. The constant competition forced species to adapt, to fill every possible niche. It's not chaos, it's innovation. Director Blue looked thoughtful. Our worlds are different. We removed predation from our ecosystems ages ago. We thought we were creating paradise, but we might have removed the drive to evolve. Professor White finished. When was the last time a new species emerged on any coalition world? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Their peaceful worlds, free from the violence of predation, had also become stagnant. Earth's harsh but dynamic system had produced more variety, more adaptation, and ultimately more intelligence than their carefully managed ecosystems. Red displayed one final image, a human family having a picnic in a park, while birds flew overhead, insects buzzed around flowers, and small mammals scurried in the grass. They live in the middle of what we see as a horror, Director. But they've found beauty in it. They understand something we don't, that life needs challenge to grow. Director Blue nodded slowly. Update the report to the Coalition. Earth isn't a savage world that needs to be avoided. It's a laboratory of evolution, a place where competition breeds innovation. We need to learn from them, not fear them. As the team began drafting their new report, they realized that their understanding of life itself was changing. Perhaps there was wisdom in Earth's endless dance of predator and prey after all. The grand meeting hall of the Coalition Council was packed with representatives from 100 peaceful worlds. They had gathered to hear the final report about Earth and the implications it held for their civilization. Director Blue stood at the center, with Red and Professor White by his side. "Honored Council," Director Blue began, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "What we discovered on Earth challenges everything we thought we knew about biological and social development." The main display showed their complete analysis of Earth's ecosystem. Many council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats as they watched brief clips of Earth's food chain in action. "We came to Earth expecting to find another garden world," Director Blue continued. "Instead, we found a planet where consumption drives evolution, where predation breeds innovation, and most importantly, where competition creates progress." Red stepped forward, showing comparative data between Earth and coalition worlds. The differences were stark. Earth showed thousands of new species appearing over relatively short periods, while coalition worlds had remained virtually unchanged for millions of years. "Our worlds are dying," Red announced, causing gasps throughout the chamber. "Not quickly, not violently, but slowly and peacefully. We removed predation from our ecosystems, thinking we were creating paradise. Instead, we removed the very force that drives adaptation and change." Professor White added her own findings. Earth's humans emerged from this competitive system. Their intelligence, their technology, their art, all of it came from having to survive in a world where everything is part of a complex food web. The council members watched in fascination as they showed human advancement through the ages. Each innovation was tied to their relationship with their world's food chain: weapons for hunting, fire for cooking, agriculture for consistent food supply, and eventually, the complex global civilization they had today. "But surely," one council member spoke up, "their violent world has made them aggressive and dangerous." Director Blue shook his head. "That's the most remarkable part. Humans have developed empathy, art, and philosophy despite, or perhaps because of, their place in the food chain. They understand death as part of life. They respect the balance of their ecosystem, even as they participate in it." Red displayed images of human conservation efforts, wildlife preserves, and sustainable farming practices. They're not mindless consumers. They've learned to manage their world's food web while preserving its essential dynamic nature. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some members were horrified, others fascinated, but they couldn't deny the evidence before them. "We propose," Director Blue announced, silencing the chamber, "that we designate Earth as an educational reserve, not to quarantine them, but to learn from them. Their understanding of ecological balance, despite its violent nature, might be exactly what our worlds need." Professor White stepped forward with the final recommendation. "Furthermore, we suggest a careful program of controlled predation reintroduction in selected coalition ecosystems. Under human guidance, we can restore the dynamic balance our worlds have lost." The council debated for hours. In the end, the vote was clear. Earth would become the first world classified not as a danger to be avoided, but as a template for biological and social development. As the research team prepared to return to Earth, this time for open contact, Red made one final observation in the ship's log. "We came to Earth expecting to teach them about peaceful existence. Instead, they taught us that true peace isn't about removing conflict. It's about understanding our place in the great dance of life." Their food chain shocked us, but it showed us that competition, when properly balanced, doesn't just destroy. It creates, it innovates, it evolves. And perhaps, she added, watching Earth grow larger in their viewport, that's the greatest revelation of all. In their endless cycle of consumption, humans found not just survival, but wisdom. They learned to thrive in a world we thought too harsh to bear, and in doing so, they might just help us save our own worlds from the slow death of too much peace. The research vessel Seeker began its descent toward Earth, carrying not just scientists this time, but students ready to learn from the species that had mastered the art of living in harmony with a complex and competitive universe.